Hello and welcome to the Flourishing Introvert Talks with me, 𝗳𝗂𝗶𝘀. This is the podcast that celebrates the natural gifts of introverts so that we can flourish in all situations. Episode 316, When Uncertainty Shakes Capability. Our lives are filled with uncertainty, and yet many of us crave certainty and feel rocked to the core without it. Yet none of us know for certain what the day ahead holds, despite having made our clear plans and our to-do lists. The actions or decisions of others, circumstances beyond our control, and our own choices ensure that. And I say many of us as opposed to all of us because some people crave variety more than they crave certainty. So being shaken or rocked to the core by uncertainty is by no means a universal experience. I'll say more on that later. One thing I am sure of, though, is that we're living in what feels like increasingly uncertain times, made more apparent by the speed of life, how connected we are to the whole world, and just how quickly news travels. So the purpose of this episode is not to pull the wool over your eyes and pretend that uncertainty is all in your mind and nothing to worry about. Your own intellect would see straight through that. The purpose is to increase your ability to deal with uncertainty in order to help you reduce the stress of it. We tend to be rocked by uncertainty because our brains are prediction machines. If we can successfully predict what is going to happen next, we can feel more ready to deal with it. Research published by Oxford University researchers found that people use this predictive sense to determine how well they will do. So in those scenarios where uncertainty is high, and therefore we cannot predict what will happen, we're more likely to feel less capable because we don't know what's coming around the corner. Can you imagine how this creates an increased cognitive load? I guess you can, because so many of us are feeling it right now, one way or another. From a psychological perspective, intolerance of uncertainty or an underlying fear of the unknown is a trait where people have a tendency to react negatively and even experience distress when not all of the answers are known. This trait leads them to engage in certainty-seeking behaviours, which includes seeking reassurance, obsessive checking, and excessive information seeking. This may provide temporary relief, but only if answers are available. As you might imagine, the percentage of the population impacted and therefore displaying these behaviours increases significantly during times of unprecedented change. Here's the real kicker, though. The higher someone's intolerance of uncertainty, the greater the likelihood that they will doubt their capabilities. And it's because their ability to predict what will happen has been impaired. In this case, it's helpful to remind ourselves that our capabilities themselves haven't diminished. They are just the same. But what has changed is our access to the evidence of how we've coped previously, and therefore our belief in our ability to cope with the unknown. Let me remind you again, we deal with unknowns and uncertainty day in, day out. It is true that those people with a higher tolerance for uncertainty are likely to be those who seemingly breeze through times of change, even when there are still a lot of unknowns. They may not fully understand why others are crumpling, and we may not understand why they are not. We may look at them and wonder if they're being blasé, or if they've missed the point, or are simply ignoring what's going on. It's fascinating how we can look at difference and assume there is wrong there somewhere, just like any bias. So how does this relate to us as introverts? The answer is not clear-cut. Introverts are not automatically intolerant of uncertainty, but I have a caveat. For those of us already doubting ourselves because of the incessant feedback or pressure to be different, or who are caught in the vice-like grip of our inner critic and who believe that they are not enough, this uncertainty can be particularly destabilizing. Our preference to prepare fully means that we may be demonstrating those certainty-seeking behaviours, and when the answers are insufficient or absent altogether, we can retreat and stop asking or struggle to ask the right questions of the right people. We may even stray into paranoia territory, assuming things are being kept from us. Of course, there may be things we cannot be told yet, but it's not a deliberate ploy to deceive us or treat us like mushrooms, kept in the dark and fed shite. So let me now honour the intention of this episode, which is to increase your ability to deal with uncertainty in order to help you reduce the stress of it. Of course, the starting point is to really know your own type of introversion so that you know and play to your natural strengths, which are the foundations of your capabilities. Once you've nailed those, it's time for some reframing about the very nature of capability. People often use capability and competence interchangeably, but they are different. In this sense, we can start to think about capability as how we navigate uncertainty, and for that we can pull on our natural strengths, talents and competencies. So feeling capable in the face of uncertainty isn't about having all of the answers or being crystal clear and rushing on apace. It's about trusting that you have the wherewithal to find enough of what you need to keep going. And as introverts, we have plenty of skills and strengths to call on once we give ourselves a moment to reflect and regroup. Sounds simple, and as I found out, it does get easier with experience. So where do we start? I have 7 steps that will set you on the right path and enable you to play to your introverted strengths in the process. Number 1, give yourself the time and space to identify the uncertainty you're experiencing and honour how you're feeling about it. Denying your feelings or pushing them down doesn't help in the long run. Number 2, make a list of the knowns. There are often more than you think, and then note down the unknowns that are unsettling you and why. Number 3, acknowledge that the uncertainty or unknowns are not making you less capable. They may simply be requiring you to access different capabilities. So regularly make a note of what's going well. Number 4, use your ability to reflect on the unknowns to ask the relevant questions of those who are likely to know. Purposeful curiosity is a valuable skill at this point. Number 5, focus your attention on what you can control or influence rather than catastrophizing about the things beyond your control. This improves efficiency, reduces stress, and shores up your personal agency. Number 6, given that some unknowns will remain unknown, be okay with taking one step at a time, then pausing to reflect and reassess before taking the next. This may feel like slow progress, but it is still progress and is likely to prevent you from falling down rabbit holes. Finally, number 7, access your calmness and portray that whenever possible. Behaviour breeds behaviour, and it's all too easy for people to get whipped up into a frenzy over the unknowns, but that simply serves to unsettle people even more. I strongly recommend you make a note of those 7 points and keep them to hand, because we're surrounded by uncertainty and you need to know how to not be sideswiped by it. In essence, dealing effectively with uncertainty is an essential aspect of managing change, as I learned during my MSc in Change Agent Skills and Strategies. So, it's in all of our interests to recognise that our capabilities are not diminished in times of uncertainty and change. We simply need to access and strengthen different capabilities, because when we encounter what feels like insurmountable roadblocks, which we will, when our resilience wanes, which it often does, and when we think contingency planning is only for negative Nellies, we're not giving ourselves the best chance to flourish. Which is why my next episode is called An Introvert's Guide to Change. Most of all, remember that uncertainty is not something we need to overcome, and instead we need to notice it, listen to it, and work with it. So it's not, how do I remove uncertainty? The more useful question is, what is this uncertainty asking me to examine before I act? Because uncertainty is where possibility and growth begin. Keep those 7 points to hand, and as 𝗵𝗲𝗵𝗀 so astutely wrote and sang over 20 years ago, today is where your book begins. The rest is still unwritten.
You are listening to an Intentional Media Production podcast.